I was a child, I befriended a rose. Or I should say rather that she befriended me. I was out in the backyard playing under the salmonberry bushes when I felt the presence of another person. I looked up, and there she was. A kind presence, an intelligent presence, and a loving presence. And I knew in that moment that I wasn't alone. Now, growing up, I found all kinds of ways to relate to plants. Like many of us, as a child, I made daisy chains and hunted for four-leaf clovers. In my teens, I found books on herbal medicine, and I went out and mashed up comfrey leaves and plantain root. I found books on wild food, and I went out and collected lamb's quarters and dandelion greens. I found books on plant dyes, and I experimented with onion skins and walnut husks. In my late teens and early 20s, I discovered field biology, and I learned how to estimate populations of plants in sample plots out in the forest. It was about as exciting as that sounded. But in doing this, I also taught myself how to identify plants scientifically by simultaneously teaching myself how to draw. I would spend days, at times, with a single blade of grass. And the drawing soon turned to photography. But in all of the ways that I had learned how to relate to plants so far, all of which have proved to be very helpful to humankind ever since, I still felt like something was missing. Like there was some kernel, core essence of the relationship that I had not yet heard articulated in my life, and therefore it stayed just out of reach, like a word on the tip of my tongue. Until I found an essay by a woman named Kathleen Harrison. Now, Kathleen Harrison is an ethnobotanist, and I didn't know this at the time, but an ethnobotanist is someone who studies not only how people in different cultures use plants, as I had been doing, but also how they perceive plants, and how they perceive what's possible in our relationship with plants. Now, in her essay, Kat made two key points that I remember to this day. And the first is that many, if not most people in indigenous cultures relate to plants with a spirit of reciprocity. And that is that if you use a plant for anything, you offer it something in return. It's just good manners. So in cultures that value tobacco, they may leave a pinch of tobacco. But she suggests that in our culture, what we value more than anything is our time. And so if you use a plant for anything, you might consider offering it your time. The next point she made is that certain cultures have discovered that if you spend enough time with a plant, and if you listen very, very closely, you will get to learn its song. And then you can heal another person, not just with the leaves or the bark or the roots of the plant, but you can heal them with its song. Now, this is less surprising when you consider what happens when you spend a whole lot of time with another person. After a while, you may start to speak like they do or laugh like they do. You may learn from their insights and their life experiences, and after a while, at least in part, you may start to see the world through their eyes. In my 30s, I got a job at the University Herbarium, a hub of botanical research. Now, the botanists who work there are fantastic. They spend months out in the field, come back, they sit in these back rooms looking through the microscopes, and they're looking not just at the hairs on the plants, but the glands on the hairs of the plants. And not just at the patterns of the leaves, but the patterns of the veins on the leaves. Their attention to detail is exquisite. And the work that they do, much of which involves differentiating one species from another, which is invaluable for conservation, But there's a tenet in conservation biology, and that says that we as humans will only protect what we love, and we will only love what we know. And while I loved being in the world of botany, when it comes to plants, I couldn't help but feeling like there's just so much more to know. And I know my botany friends agree with me. I'll give you an example. So I helped to teach in the botany labs, and when I'd walk into the lab, I'd see branches and flowers in jars along the table. And I couldn't help but thinking that this is like trying to get to know someone in an anatomy lab. I'm not talking about the other students either, right? It's as if I were to try to get to know you by really studying your liver. I mean, I might get to know quite a lot about some of you, but it wouldn't be the same as if we were sitting face to face. And it wouldn't be the same as if I had the privilege of observing you as you go about your day. And it wouldn't be the same as if we were having a conversation. You see, in this last way of knowing, not only would I learn so much more about you, I would be invited to learn about myself. The intelligence of one being both strengthens and challenges the intelligence of another. Ultimately, both are transformed in the process. It's called a relationship. Now, while working at the herbarium, I was approached and asked if I'd like to be part of a creative writing class. Now, the purpose of this class was to put our creative writing in public space on campus to invite people to engage with the environment in novel ways. I left that first class mortified, full of dread. My writing at the time was personal, confessional, intimate, and the idea of it being in any form on campus with my name on it seemed practically inappropriate. Yeah, but as I was walking along, I looked at the little plants growing by the side of the road, and I thought, I wonder if I could create a project that would invite people to see plants the way I love to see them, or to feel the way I feel when I look at a plant. Or, as the little prince once said, to learn to see through the eyes of the heart. So I went home, opened my computer screen. I put a black rectangle on the screen. And on it, I wrote the Latin name and the common name of a plant. I wrote the family name and the geography, everything you'd see on your typical botanical garden sign. But then in the middle, where if you're lucky, you might sometimes see a little tidbit of extra, possibly boring information, I wrote, some believe there is a deity in this tree. Now, I went on to write 140 signs. And the purpose in the writing, the idea was to try to mirror the many different ways that the people on campus might look at plants, if they looked at plants at all. I wasn't sure they did, but if they did, how might they see them? So I wrote signs for the chemists. I wrote signs for the poets. I wrote signs for the historians. And signs for the philosophers. I wrote signs for the economists. And the modern ecologists. And the traditional ecologists. And the real purpose of this project was not just to mirror the many different ways that the people on campus might look at plants, if they looked at plants at all, but rather to show that there are many ways of seeing. And in a system or a relationship as complex and profound as that between humans and other species, it's vital to recognize that our limited cultural worldview, as incredibly helpful as it can be and has been, is really only one of many worldviews. And have the capacity and the open-mindedness to move between worldviews, even value systems, according to what might be most helpful in any given situation. So, for example, the two lenses, culturally accepted lenses through which I had been perceiving plants so far, predominantly, were one, how can I use you? And I think we can all relate to this, and this is still how I relate to plants really on a daily basis. And I want to study you. But I want to study you in such a way that it's going to be understood that the relationship will be completely one-sided without any sense of reciprocity. Now, I think we can all agree that if these are the two premises upon which you try to get to know someone, that it won't bode well for that relationship. Reciprocity is essential. I remember some years ago I was swimming out here at Somerset Long Bay, and a turtle popped its head above the water and looked me right in the eyes. And in that moment, I had a realization that in all of the years that I had been looking at plants and looking at birds and looking at wildlife, that they had been looking at me in return. It felt delicious, like a huge relief. You see, how we see and treat others, but directly informs and colors how we see and treat ourselves and our whole experience in life. And by unconsciously setting myself up in relation to nature as one who uses, or as an outside objective observer, I had created a situation of great loneliness for myself and alienation, as if humans were the only ones on earth, or as if I was the only one on earth. So I created some plant signs, botanical garden signs, to invoke this sense of reciprocity. And these are based in real scientific studies, but I did tweak the language for greater effect. So for example, this plant, like many, perceives color and movement. It knows what color shirt you are wearing and is aware of you when you walk by. This grass can feel you standing on it. When you stepped onto the lawn, it sent a message to the rest of the grass to defend itself. That's true. And this is from 5th grade biology. You and this tree are breathing together. You are helping her stay alive, and she is helping you. You and this plant share a common ancestor who lived 1.6 billion years ago. This is your family. So as we stand before a plant, we can pause and wonder, is it possible, if we are both alive and both breathing, is it possible, and I'm saying just possible because I know the question of intelligence and the definition of consciousness and all of these things is a very hot topic, but is it possible that this plant is sentient just the way I am? And is it possible this plant is curious just the way I am? Is it possible this plant has the same sense of self, the same interest in its own life, and the same desire to protect its own life just the way I do? Is it possible this plant has the same sense of its surroundings and the same deep desire to connect, to relate, to grow, and ultimately to continue to evolve just the way I do and just the way we all do? And then from here, as we set out on a walk, we can be interested in all the different ways that this type of life force and intelligence has taken form. And we can ask, for example, who are you? And what decisions have you made? And we can observe, wow, you are an incredible climber. And you are just unbelievably beautiful. Well done. Very nice. And you are so famous and so powerful that people have gone to war over you. And when I look at you, I'm really not sure how to relate to you. I imagine with a great deal of wisdom. And you are kind of pretty, but really toxic, even in tiny doses. Beware. And you have the habit of invading every space that you come into. What is up with that? What are we going to do with you, especially here in Bermuda? It's a problem. You just smell fantastic. And you are remarkably hairy. And after these conversation starters, it's only natural to go a little further and to slow down and to say, how are you today? What do you need right now? Can you help me? Thank you. I love you. Can I sit with you a while? To stand before another face to face. To be willing to put aside all preconceived ideas we have about them and about ourselves. To be interested then in their particular brilliance and how it is different from your own, and how it is that difference that allows you to learn from each other, to grow together, and to enjoy each other's company, which is really important. And then to engage in that daily dance of tending and pruning. And to allow yourself, even though it may be very difficult, to be tended and pruned in return. Until little by little, through the passage of time, you may find you've arrived beyond all ideas to the simple and unfathomable, complex and intertwined, wondrous, strange truth of who we are. This is the foundation of every great friendship. Thank you.